Today's talk focuses on the prisoner's dilemma. Should you purchase your Model 3 or Model Y now and then lose $15,000 on the vehicle by the time the Model Y the Cybertruck comes out? Or should you wait it out, not lose the money, but what if the Cybertruck is delayed for an extended period of time? So there's a nest of issues here that we explore in this show, and we look forward to sharing some ideas with you in this regard. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Today's talk is really, I guess we always come up with unusual ways to do things, makes it harder but interesting. I wanted to make sure we thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. As you can see, our location today is Redondo Beach. We're taking in the beach behind us, and we'll show you some more video of that at the end of the show so you can enjoy the sound as well. And we're hopeful that our mic situation won't be damaged greatly by it because, as you can see, taking in the waves and the wind is a pretty awesome experience. So what we wanted to obviously get onto here is the meat of our show. We're in Southern Cal right now, getting everything set for our SpaceX due diligence trip. Trip is going well. We've lined up some experts that are world-class in knowledge of everything happening with SpaceX, as well as the history of it and kind of how and why Elon chose to be here in Southern California versus in the Bay Area where Tesla's based. So we'll save that for later. Without further ado, let's get into our main body of our show today. So what happened was I had a meeting yesterday with one of our viewers who's based here in Southern California, and he shared with me a dilemma that I did not know a lot of people were having, but that he felt was dramatically impacting what's going on with Tesla currently. So what that dilemma is, and I threw in the comment prisoner's dilemma in the title because there's a famous sort of research or psychological process that's called the prisoner's dilemma. And so what happens is if you have two prisoners and those prisoners, they have four choices. Those choices are both of them did something bad. Let's call it a crime. The problem that pops up is if both of them say nothing, they both get off scot-free. If one snitches and the other one doesn't, the other one goes to jail, the other one goes free. And so there is something called the prisoner's dilemma where those prisoners have to decide whether or not they snitch or not. And that's the dilemma. So I kind of brought that up in this case because we have this dilemma going, and it instead of two choices, I think it's three or four choices. The first choice is, should you buy your Model 3 as planned? Great car, performs well, excellent resale value, just a lot to say about a great vehicle and its design. The next question is, the Model Y has been announced and is now starting to ship. And so if you're in line for that vehicle, totally makes sense. What is starting to or will happen in our minds is that there's a lot of preserved value in Model 3s that will start to disappear as more Model Ys hit the streets. As Elon has articulated, the issue with the Model Y is he argues that it will outsell all of the other Tesla vehicles combined. So it basically suggests it's an excellent vehicle, but rightly so in terms of his analysis. Elon is estimating that the likelihood is that because their vehicles is such a great vehicle and it fits so many consumers well, it will easily outsell the other vehicles to date that have been sold by Tesla. And we'd have to say we agree with that. And so this brings up an interesting dilemma then. If you're in line for a Model 3 and the Model Y is in reasonable distance before you get it, should you go ahead and buy the Model Y? And therefore, now you're kind of in a stuck position because you're gonna get this vehicle. You may not have purchased your Model 3 yet, but should you delay, and what happens when the line for that Model Y is extremely long and therefore you have 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 before you get your vehicle, and then you don't have anything to drive in the interim. Interesting challenge. So we believe, and just like everybody else, once there's 50, 100,000 Ys out there, the residual value of the Model 3s will decline because people will be like, hey, I'll take a Y over a 3 any day. So the next thing that we look at here is, let's throw the Cybertruck into the mix. So the news came out this week that there are about 500,000 Cybertrucks that have been reserved/ordered. A new dilemma arrives, which is, let's say you choose to purchase your Model Y now. You end up with an interesting position because, in theory, if you have the Cybertruck in order and that's what you're looking forward to driving, how do you deal with the fact that you now have to, you potentially have the Cybertruck's arrival even damaging residual value of the Model Ys, because that vehicle obviously is very unique, high demand, etc. And so the challenges that a Model 3 owner might have, sort of the Model Y owners will have as the Cybertruck arrives. So now the interesting challenge put forward by Jonathan, our viewer, is, in theory, you lose about $1,000 a month on that vehicle. If in fact the Cybertrucks will arrive latter part of 2021 into early 22, for every month you own that Model Y, you lose $1,000 in value, and now you get your the Cybertruck that you purchased, and you've lost $15,000 in the process, because that's the decline in all types of value associated with your Model Y that you initially had. So when this was explained to me, I was really surprised that it hadn't been discussed extensively. One of the things that we've been sort of questioning / wondering about is, Elon is doing a good job of introducing new products. He's also putting people on waiting lists. And one of the questions that starts to arrive is, how do the consumers react to the delivery schedule of vehicles that Tesla has in mind? I mean, the Cybertruck is a great car, but in theory, you could have delayed the announcement of that vehicle by 6 months, let the Model Y get going, and people have ordered and owning them happily, and then you introduce the Cybertruck, and then you don't, in essence, freeze the sales of the earlier vehicles. Because kind of what's implied right now is, if you're in the line for a Model Y and it's a reasonable distance out, be it 6 months or a year, you have a high likelihood that you're going to keep driving your ICE vehicle or maybe your other Tesla vehicle until that other vehicle arrives. And so this can kind of put a crimp on the sales currently that you need to keep the company successfully moving. So here's where we have our prisoner's dilemma from a consumer standpoint. And I really think that, Tesla may have to address this, because one of the emphasis points of Jonathan, our viewer, is that if you look at sales in California, those sales are down. Now, the negative press's interpretation of this is that people just don't want Teslas as badly as they used to. So therefore, the company is suffering. It's a legitimate argument to say, what if the real issue that's going on right now is that the demand is good? The problem is that consumers have so many choices, and many of those choices are not here currently and may not be here for a long time. So all of those choices are now affecting sales negatively, and you have consumers sort of in a dilemma of, which vehicle should I choose? And if I make a bad choice, it costs me a lot of money in depreciation or loss of value of that vehicle. And so the answer, so this is the dilemma, this is the table that we've set. And the question from our standpoint is sort of, what's our perspective on this? Because we're understanding better what the consumer choice might look like. The answer we're coming up with on this whole thing is that it's sort of multifaceted. for a large, 60% of the population around the globe is based in large cities. Especially if you look at places like Europe. The issue with the Cybertruck is that there's nobody in those places that can afford to buy and house that vehicle in high density areas. In fact, most people, the problem the auto industry is having now, and why the robotaxi is so big from Tesla potentially, is that a lot of people are saying, hey, I just assume, let's skip the whole robotaxi, we'll go robotaxi and skip even owning a car. And that right now is one of the biggest challenges to the auto industry, is declining sales related to folks choosing to go to things like Uber or Lyft, etc. So I think it's a legitimate argument, though, in Texas and other places that are heavy pickup truck buyers. It's a big time issue that definitely needs to be thought through and addressed. The other thing that we're looking at is price point. It turns out that for every $10,000 or $15,000 in price, that's a different set of consumers that can afford that. So in theory, the Y does affect Model 3 sales, but the 3 still is your most cost-effective entry in getting a Tesla. And so, one of the ways this is solved is that, you might want a Model S or you might want an X, but your budget really says, hey, a Model 3 is the best I can do. And so that's one of the ways the solution is actually being delivered without any major issues, if you will, thus far. The third component of the answer to this that we are intrigued by is something we call the Australia effect. And what the Australia effect is just the fact that, the rollout of the vehicles has tended to favor America, Europe, and China first, and then sort of secondary countries with smaller populations like Australia have been getting their vehicles, but getting them as much as a year or two after everybody else has gotten theirs. So we've been keeping an eye on satisfaction degree for people in Australia, as well as their enthusiasm for continuing to purchase, because one of the benefits Tesla has right now, based on the size of market and how Tesla can repurpose vehicles, is that they can, in essence, make vehicles for other markets and ship them there if there's an issue going on in one place and not the other. So we kind of saw that in the numbers that came out in Q4 from 2019, which is basically, you saw a decline in sales in California, but you saw a pickup in sales in other places. In fact, our friends in Amsterdam or in the countries in that region have pointed out, because of tax incentives, etc., they had record sales of vehicles. So in essence, Tesla has the blessing right now of being able to ship vehicles not sold in one location to another, and those other locations are happy to have them. So this isn't out for the company, but it definitely still puts in a dilemma of, kind of what's going to happen if you guys keep coming up with new great vehicles for people to buy. You're going to damage your ability to sell your current vehicles, because people are sitting there waiting in line, not wanting to lose a great deal of money. We actually think that there's actually a cause for Tesla to severely consider these dilemmas by consumers and finding some way to lessen the blow if possible. Clearly, they're buying back vehicles and they're leasing. That's an option. There are many ways in which this is being solved. But I do think it's a legitimate concern, and it's one that the company should address, because its rollout process is really affecting consumers' sense of, what's kind of going on and how to implement what they're doing, because it's just too many choices, and all those choices, many of whom could result in people losing a large amount of money. So what we think is going to happen sales-wise for Tesla, etc., is that we think that there's enough demand in other locations has been occurring to allow Tesla to meet its production and sales goals on Model 3, even with the spread of the Model Y sitting out there. Will that stay the case? I would say probably not. I mean, once those Model Ys start hitting the road hard, a lot of people will finally say, hey, my waiting list on that vehicle is not that long. And so I'll go ahead and stop and not buy my Model 3, Model X, or Model S right now and wait for that vehicle to come. So, we think that it's a legitimate concern, and it'll be interesting to see if and how Tesla addresses this in terms of finding ways to make people whole on their earlier purchased vehicles versus them just sitting it out and waiting for that new vehicle to come in, and they lose a large number of sales in the process. So we look forward to any and all of your comments. We think it's a legitimate issue to be considered because there's a lot of money one way or the other that's moving here. The next, perhaps next to last thing we wanted to review here is the coronavirus expansion into Italy and other places in Korea is troubling. We really think that with large infection counts, there's no doubt economies will be impacted by this, and we're hopeful that authorities will make the move to engage in behavior that's supportive of good structural thinking in terms of process. One of the issues that I'm seeing is in science there's something called mutations, and what I completely don't understand is why everybody's saying it's only 15 days, and after those 15 days there's nothing more to worry about when it comes to the virus. And my argument is, why assume that the virus will not stick around beyond 14 days? It can change as it sees fit, and therefore create more problems, particularly if you have people go home and it turns out that you had the 1 or 2 people who needed 30 to 60 days versus the 14, and now you have them infecting their families and their entire communities. So we really look forward to clear thinking coming out from the authorities that reflects good scientific logic that keeps the populations of large numbers of places safe. So we look forward to keeping you guys updated on what's going on with this, etc. The final note that we have today is that we wanted to review our health processes as usual. Don't forget, don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 to let the food digest. No acid reflux or cancer related. Number 2 is 25 leg lifts a day to make sure you strengthen the quad muscles. No knee issues or reduce knee issues because you're strengthening all those muscles. Number 3 is once a week for fried food max. Those fried foods are stored next to your lungs, next to major organs, and causes type 2 diabetes. Consider a 5-2 or other fasting type diet as a way to maintain mental faculties. And then, Mr. Petrobono has pointed out that introducing weightlifting can be a way to maintain bone density as well. We think that's legit also as something to present. And then try to do that 30 SPF as you leave the home. It might be a bad idea as well. So we wanted to thank you for taking time out. We look forward to your suggestions of show ideas or things for us to research. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehitro, Hebrew, Hoda Hafez, Farsi. In Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Have a great day, and bye for now. We're taking you out beach style. So we're looking north towards Manhattan Beach there. And this is looking south towards Palisades. Once again, thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Bye for now. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight.